Hello, hello. Welcome back to Something to Think About. Like I said, we are going through the book of Ecclesiastes. We are going to be reading 333, so it will be in 4 parts so that we can just read, listen, learn, digest, meditate. Yeah, I'm reading from the Living Bible. A thought for thought translation. Yeah, I like this one because it is very basic English. Everybody can understand this English. Yeah, so here goes. So I'm reading chapter 1 to chapter 3. The author, Solomon of Jerusalem, King David's son, the preacher. In my opinion, nothing is worthwhile. Everything is futile. For what does a man get for all his hard work? Generations come and go, but it makes no difference. The sun rises and sets and hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and north, here and there, twisting back and forth, getting nowhere. The rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. And the water returns again to the rivers and flows again to the sea. Everything is unutterably weary and tiresome. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. Nothing is truly new. It has all been done or said before. What can you point to that is new? How do you know it didn't exist long ages ago? We don't remember what happened in those former times, and in the future generations, no one will remember what we have done back here. I, the preacher, was king of Israel, living in Jerusalem. I applied myself to search for understanding about everything in the universe. I discovered that the lot of men which God has dealt to him is not a happy one. It is all foolishness, chasing the wind. What is wrong can be rightened. It is water over the dam, and there is no use thinking of what might have been. I said to myself, look, I am better educated than any of the kings before me in Jerusalem. I have greater wisdom and knowledge, so I worked hard to be wise instead of foolish. But now I realize that even this was great chasing the wind. Even this was like chasing the wind. For the more wisdom, the more my grief. To increase knowledge only increases distress. I said to myself, come now, be merry, enjoy yourself to the full. But I found this too was futile, for it was silly to be laughing all the time. What good does it do? So after a lot of thinking, I decided to try the road of drink while still holding steady to my course of seeking wisdom. Next, I changed my course again and followed the path of folly, so that I would experience the only happiness most men have throughout their lives. Then I tried to find fulfillment by inaugurating a great public works program: homes, vineyards, gardens, parks, orchards for myself, and reservoirs to hold the water to irrigate my plantations. Next, I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born within my household. I also bred great herds and flocks, more than any of the kings before me. I collected silver and gold as taxes from many kings and provinces. In the cultural arts, I organized the men's and women choirs and orchestras. And then there were many beautiful concubines. I became greater than any of the kings in Jerusalem before me. And with it all, I remained clear-eyed, so that I would evaluate all these things. Anything I wanted, I took, and I did not restrain myself from any joy. I even found great pleasure in hard work. This pleasure was indeed my only reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had tried, it was all so useless as chasing of the wind, and there was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. Now I began a study of the comparative virtues of wisdom and folly, and anyone else would come to the same conclusion I did, that wisdom is of more value than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise man sees while the fool is blind. And yet I noticed that there was one thing that happened to wise and foolish alike. Just as the fool will die, so will I. So, of what value is all this wisdom? Then I realized that even wisdom is futile. For the wise and fool both die, and in the day to come, both will be long forgotten. So now I hate life because it is also irrational, also foolishness, chasing the wind. And I am disgusted about this, that I must leave the fruits of all my hard work to others. And who can tell whether my son will be a wise man or a fool? And yet all I have will be given to him. How discouraging. So I turned in despair from hard work as the answer to my search for satisfaction. For though I spent my life searching for wisdom, knowledge, and skill, I must leave all of it to someone who hasn't done a day's work in his life. He inherits all my efforts free of charge. This is not only foolish, but unfair. So, what does a man get for all his hard work? Days full of sorrow and grief and restless bitterness. It is all utterly ridiculous. So I decided that there was nothing better for a man to do than to enjoy his food and drink and his job. Then I realized that even this pleasure is from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy apart from him? Amen. For God gives those who please him wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away from him and gives it to those who please him. So here too, we see an example of foolishly chasing the wind. There is a right time for everything. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to destroy, a time to rebuild, a time to cry, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time for scattering stones, and a time for gathering stones, a time to hug, and a time not to hug, a time to find, and a time to lose, a time for keeping, and a time for throwing away, a time to tear, and a time to repair, a time to be quiet, and a time to speak up, a time for loving, and a time for hating, a time for war, a time for peace. What does one really get from hard work? I have thought about this in connection with all the various kinds of work God has given to mankind. Everything is appropriate in its own time. But though God has planted eternity in the hearts of men, even so, many can't see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I conclude that first, there is nothing better for a man than to be happy and to enjoy himself as long as he can. And second, that he should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of his labor. For these are gifts from God. And I know this, that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added or taken from it. God's purpose in this is that man should fear the all-powerful God. Whatever is has been long ago, and whatever is going to be has been before. God brings to pass again what was in the distant past and disappeared. Moreover, I noticed that throughout the earth, justice is giving way to crime, and even the police courts are corrupt. I said to myself, in due season, God will judge everything man does, both good and bad. And then I realized that God is letting the world go on in its sinful way so that he can test mankind. And so that men themselves will see that they are no better than beasts. For men and animals both breathe the same air, and both die. So mankind has no real advantage over the beast. What an absurdity. All go to one place, the dust from which they came, and to which they must return. For who can prove that the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of animal goes down into the dust? So I saw that there is nothing better for men than that they should be happy in their work, for that is what they are here for. And no one can bring them back to life to enjoy what will be in the future. So let them enjoy it now. Wow, wow, wow. It's all I can say. Remain blessed and continue to be victorious.